I'm Natalie Mitchell, 24, and I just witnessed my parents give my sister Allison a brand new Tesla for her Yale graduation. Everyone was cheering as she screamed with excitement, jumping up and down in our perfectly manicured front yard. Meanwhile, I stood on the sidelines clutching my small gift box, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. The same knot I felt my entire life growing up in Allison's shadow. I never expected what would happen next when I opened my own gift. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment where you're watching from, hit subscribe if you've ever felt overlooked in your family, and let's get into this emotional roller coaster that changed everything between me and my perfect sister. To understand why that moment hit me so hard, you need to know about our family dynamic. I've always been the second choice, the afterthought in the Mitchell household. My dad, James, is a renowned cardiovascular surgeon at Boston Memorial. He's brilliant, respected, and has impossibly high standards. My mom, Karen, was Miss Massachusetts 1995 before becoming one of the top-selling real estate agents in our county. They're both driven, successful, and have always expected nothing less from their daughters. The problem? Only one of us seemed capable of meeting those expectations. And it wasn't me. Allison came into this world seemingly perfect. She was walking at 9 months, speaking in full sentences by age 2, and reading chapter books by kindergarten. She has our mom's striking beauty, tall, naturally blonde, with piercing blue eyes, and our dad's analytical mind. Everything came easily to her. Straight A's without studying, athletic trophies, student government, popularity. She's the kind of person other people hate to love because it's impossible not to adore her. I, on the other hand, struggled from the beginning. School was a battlefield for me. Words jumped around the page when I tried to read. Numbers refused to make sense. My teachers constantly told my parents, Natalie isn't applying herself or she needs to focus more. But the truth wouldn't come out until my freshman year of college when I finally got diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. 20 years of struggling, of feeling stupid, of watching disappointment flash across my parents' faces, all because they never bothered to have me properly tested. She's just not academically inclined like Allison, they'd say. She's more creative. That was their polite way of saying I wasn't smart enough. The favoritism showed in countless ways throughout our childhood. When Allison turned 16, she got a brand new Jeep with a big red bow in the driveway. For my 16th, I received a bus pass and access to Mom's old sedan on weekends if I filled the tank. Allison's birthdays featured elaborate parties with professional decorations, catering, and dozens of guests. My parents would often schedule my birthday celebrations on different days because they conflicted with Allison's competitions or events. One year, they completely forgot until my grandmother Dorothy called to wish me happy birthday and realized no one had planned anything. Speaking of Grandma Dorothy, she was my savior growing up. My mom's mother, she lived about an hour away in a cozy cottage filled with books and art. She was a retired art teacher who recognized my creative abilities when no one else did. While my parents attended every single one of Allison's soccer games, debate tournaments, and award ceremonies, it was Dorothy who showed up to my art exhibitions and school plays. She'd sit in the front row, beaming with pride, while my parents sent texts about being tied up with work or at Allison's state finals. Your mind works differently, Natalie, and that's your superpower, Dorothy would tell me. The world needs people who see things from unexpected angles. She was the one who encouraged me to pursue graphic design, the perfect blend of creativity and technology that somehow made sense to my scattered brain. I flourished in my college design program, graduating with honors 3 years ago, though my parents barely noticed. They were busy helping Allison prepare for Yale Law School interviews that weekend. They promised to make it to my ceremony, but called that morning with apologies. Allison had an important tennis match they couldn't miss. After graduation, I didn't move back home like Allison did during her breaks. Instead, I rented a tiny studio apartment downtown and started freelancing while working at a local design agency. I built my portfolio, won a regional design award last year, and recently landed a junior art director position at a boutique agency. My parents still refer to my career as my computer drawing hobby and regularly ask when I'm going to get a real job, like Allison's upcoming position at a prestigious law firm. I've learned to find validation elsewhere, from satisfied clients, from my growing Instagram following where I share my designs, from my tight group of friends who understand my worth. But deep down, that little girl who just wanted her parents' approval still lives inside me, still hopes that someday they'll see me the way they see Allison. Despite everything, I don't hate my sister. That's the complicated part. Allison has always been kind to me, if somewhat oblivious to the imbalance in our family. She's generous, thoughtful, and genuinely supportive of my work when she remembers to ask about it. I sometimes wonder if she notices the disparity in how we're treated, but she's been so conditioned to being the center of attention that it probably seems normal to her. So when her Yale Law School graduation approached, I pushed down all those complicated feelings and prepared to play my supporting role once again in the Allison Mitchell show. 3 weeks before Allison's graduation, I requested time off from work. My boss, Julia, raised an eyebrow when I mentioned needing Thursday and Friday for my sister's graduation festivities. 2 days for a graduation? She asked. I explained that my parents had planned an elaborate celebration at their house following the actual ceremony. It's a whole thing, I said with a forced smile. Yale law, you know? Julia didn't know, but she approved my time off anyway. The week before the event, my mom called and asked if I could come over early to help decorate. You're so good with that artistic stuff, she said, which was her way of acknowledging my design skills without actually complimenting my career. Sure, Mom, I agreed, ignoring the familiar pang of frustration. What time do you need me? Could you come Wednesday evening and stay over? The caterers arrive at 10 a.m. Thursday, and we need everything looking perfect before they set up. Of course they hired caterers. When I graduated, we had a small dinner at an Italian restaurant where my dad spent half the evening answering work calls. Wednesday night, I arrived with my overnight bag and design supplies. Mom had ordered mountains of blue and white decorations, Yale colors, and wanted me to work my magic, arranging everything. I spent hours creating elegant centerpieces, hanging tasteful banners, and arranging photo displays of Allison throughout her academic journey. While setting up the photos, I couldn't help but notice the disproportionate documentation of our lives. There were entire albums dedicated to Allison's debate team victories, sports tournaments, and academic achievements. Meanwhile, my graduation photos were confined to a single frame on the bookshelf, partially hidden behind a trophy Allison won for equestrian competition when she was 12. As I worked, I overheard my parents in the kitchen discussing Allison's big surprise. Do you think the bow is big enough? Mom asked. I want it to look dramatic when we reveal it. The dealership said it's their largest bow, Dad replied. And the custom interior upgrades should be finished tomorrow morning. They're delivering it around noon, and they'll park it around the corner until we're ready. My stomach dropped as I realized they were talking about a car, and not just any car. They were giving Allison a Tesla. I thought about my own graduation gift, a $200 gift card to a professional clothing store so I could dress appropriately for job interviews. Despite this revelation, I continued working late into the night on a special gift I'd created for Allison, a beautifully designed photo collage featuring moments from her law school journey. I'd secretly contacted some of her classmates for photos she wasn't in, capturing the behind-the-scenes of her law school experience. I'd spent weeks on it, using my design skills to create something meaningful that showed I was proud of her despite our complicated relationship. But I wanted to give her something tangible too. The next morning, while finishing the decorations, I slipped out to a nearby antique store. My budget was tight, but I wanted to find something special. After an hour of searching, I discovered a vintage silver locket with a tiny Yale bulldog engraved on it. Inside, I placed a tiny photo of our grandmother Dorothy, who had always encouraged both of us to follow our dreams. The locket cost nearly half my rent, but seeing it, I felt a spark of hope that maybe this gift would show my parents that thoughtfulness mattered more than extravagance. That afternoon, I called my best friend Mia for moral support. They're giving her a Tesla, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. A Tesla? For graduation? That's insane, Mia replied. What did they give you again? A gift card to and Taylor. Wow. Are you okay? I sighed, looking around at the perfect decorations I'd spent hours creating. I'm used to it. I keep hoping something will change, you know? That they'll eventually see me. You should say something, Nat. This has been going on forever. And ruin Allison's big day? I can't be that person. I paused. Besides, it's not her fault. She doesn't control what they give her. No, but she benefits from it. Has she ever once acknowledged the difference in how you're treated? I didn't have an answer for that. Had Allison ever noticed? Had she ever felt uncomfortable with the blatant favoritism? I wasn't sure. The morning of the party, I woke up early in my childhood bedroom, which had been converted into a home office the month after I moved out for college. Meanwhile, Allison's room remained perfectly preserved, waiting for her visits home. I spent extra time on my appearance, applying makeup carefully and styling my dark hair into soft waves. I chose a modest blue dress that had cost me 2 days freelance work. Looking in the mirror, I reminded myself that this day wasn't about me or my feelings. It was about celebrating Allison's achievement. I rehearsed my smile in the mirror, determined to be genuinely happy for my sister despite the knot of resentment and hurt that had taken up permanent residence in my chest. I loved Allison. I was proud of her. I just wished, for once, that someone would be equally proud of me. By noon, our family's colonial-style home was transformed into something out of a graduation special on HGTV. The caterers had set up elegant buffet tables on the patio. Bartenders prepared signature cocktails named after Yale law courses. A string quartet played softly in the corner of the living room. Everything was perfect, just as my parents demanded. Guests began arriving at 1 o'clock, extended family, my parents' country club friends, Allison's classmates, and her professors who had made the trip from New Haven. I stationed myself near the door, greeting people with a smile and directing them to the bar and appetizers. You must be so proud of your sister, everyone said, as if that was my only identity, Allison's sister. Uncle Tyler spotted me refilling the ice bucket and came over, drink in hand. There's my other niece. How's that computer drawing hobby going? It's graphic design, Uncle Tyler, and it's my career, not a hobby. I was actually promoted to junior art director last month. That's nice, sweetie. Is that something you can make a living from these days? Before I could answer, he spotted someone more interesting across the room. Excuse me, I need to say hello to Dr. Friedman. I swallowed my frustration and continued helping with hosting duties. Mom was too busy showing off Allison's law school memorabilia to notice that I was handling the guest overflow. Dad was deep in conversation with Allison's constitutional law professor, probably discussing her brilliant thesis paper. At 2:30, Allison arrived to thunderous applause. She looked radiant in a white dress, her honor cords and stole draped perfectly around her shoulders. She laughed as everyone swarmed her, accepting hugs and congratulations with practiced grace. There's my girl, Dad boomed, breaking away from his conversation to embrace her. The youngest graduate in her class and top 3%. Allison beamed, soaking in the adoration. When she spotted me hovering near the kitchen door, she broke away from her admirers and came over to hug me. The place looks amazing, Nat. Did you do all this? I nodded. Congratulations, Allie. I'm really proud of you. Thanks, she said, squeezing my arm. I couldn't have survived those all-nighters without your care packages. Those design-your-own brief templates you made saved my life during finals. For a brief moment, I felt seen. But then Mom swooped in, pulling Allison away to meet the Hendersons, who came all the way from Providence just for you. As lunch transitioned to afternoon cocktails, Dad clinked his glass for attention. Everyone quieted as he launched into an emotional speech about Allison's achievements. From the moment she was born, we knew Allison was destined for greatness, he began, his voice thick with pride. Her first-grade teacher told us she had never seen a child grasp reading so quickly. Her high school principal said she was the most promising student to walk those halls in 30 years. He continued for 15 minutes, chronicling Allison's journey from precocious child to Yale law graduate. He mentioned her clerkship offers, the prestigious firms fighting to hire her, and how she was considering a future in politics. A senator, or maybe more, someday, he said with a wink that made the crowd murmur appreciatively. Not once did he mention his other daughter. Not once did he acknowledge my recent design award or promotion. I was invisible, as always. After the speech, Mom announced it was time for gifts. My stomach tightened as Dad asked everyone to follow him outside. I hung back, clutching my small gift box and the framed photo collage I'd created. Everyone, we wanted to give Allison something special to commemorate this achievement, Dad announced when the crowd had gathered on the front lawn. He pulled out a small remote with a flourish. Something to start her professional life with the success she deserves. He pressed the button, and from around the corner came the gleaming white Tesla Model S, sporting an enormous blue bow. The car purred up the driveway as everyone gasped and applauded. Allison's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. "It's yours, sweetheart," Mom said, handing her the key fob. "Fully loaded, custom interior, and we've paid the insurance for the first year." Allison screamed with excitement, jumping up and down before hugging our parents fiercely. Everyone crowded around the vehicle, oohing and awing over its features. I stood alone on the porch steps, still holding my small gifts, feeling like I was watching the scene through thick glass. "It's something else, isn't it?" came a soft voice beside me. I turned to find Grandma Dorothy, who had arrived late and slipped in unnoticed. "It's a Tesla," I said flatly. "For graduation." Dorothy squeezed my hand. "Some gifts come with strings, Natalie. Remember that." I didn't understand what she meant, but her presence steadied me as we watched Allison giving her friends tours of her new car's interior. After about 20 minutes of Tesla admiration, the party moved back inside for cake and coffee. As the excitement over the car settled, Mom suddenly remembered my existence. "Oh," she exclaimed, a bit too loudly. "Natalie has something for you too, Allison." All eyes turned to me, and I felt my cheeks burn as I stepped forward with my gifts. The room had an uncomfortable energy, as if everyone was aware of the stark contrast between the Tesla outside and whatever modest offering I held in my hands. "It's not much," I said softly, hating how apologetic I sounded. Allison smiled genuinely as she took the packages. "You didn't have to get me anything, Nat." She opened the framed collage first, her eyes widening as she took in the dozens of carefully arranged photos capturing her law school journey. "Natalie, this is incredible," she said, tracing the design with her finger. "How did you get all these pictures?" "Some of these moments. I didn't even know anyone was photographing them. I reached out to your friends," I explained. "I wanted to capture the whole experience, not just the formal stuff." Several of Allison's classmates crowded around, pointing and laughing at memories captured in the collage. I felt a small glow of satisfaction at their reaction. Next, Allison opened the small jewelry box containing the vintage locket. She gasped softly as she lifted it out. "It's from that antique store on Maple Street," I said. "The bulldog is hand-engraved. And look inside." Allison carefully opened the locket to find the tiny photo of our grandmother. Her eyes met mine, and for once, I saw true understanding there. "Because she always believed in both of us," Allison said quietly. I nodded, throat tight with emotion. "Thank you, Natalie." "This is beautiful." She hugged me briefly before Mom redirected everyone's attention to the elaborate cake being wheeled in. From across the room, I noticed Grandma Dorothy watching us with an unreadable expression. She caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod, as if confirming something to herself. As the cake was being served, Dad suddenly called for attention again. I almost forgot. "We have one more surprise." He looked around the room. "Where's Natalie?" Surprised at being acknowledged, I raised my hand awkwardly. "I'm here." Dad walked over and handed me a small envelope. "This is for you too," he said, though his tone lacked the enthusiasm he'd shown for Allison's gift. It felt more like an afterthought. The room fell into curious silence as I stared at the envelope. It was simple white stationery with my name written in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. Confused, I looked up at Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single key attached to a handmade ceramic keychain and a folded note. The keychain was painted with a small lighthouse, something I'd loved since childhood. I unfolded the note and began to read, "My dearest Natalie, some gifts aren't meant to be shared on someone else's special day, but your father insisted on giving you this now. Inside this envelope is the key to your graduation present, 3 years late, but perhaps right on time. When you graduated college, I watched you walk across that stage alone while your parents attended Allison's tennis match. I made a decision that day that has taken until now to fulfill. The key opens the front door to Lighthouse Cottage on Maple Cove, just down the shore from my place. It's yours, Natalie, your own home, your own studio, your own place in this world where your creativity can flourish without shadows. Your parents may not have noticed your graduation, but I did. Your parents may not understand your gifts, but I do. Come see it tomorrow. We'll talk then. All my love. Grandma Dorothy. I looked up from the letter in shock, my eyes immediately finding my grandmother's across the room. She smiled gently, nodding once in confirmation. A house. My grandmother had bought me a house for my graduation. 3 years ago. The memory of my college graduation hit me like a physical blow. I had walked across the stage with highest honors in graphic design. The ceremony had been on a beautiful May morning, the kind of perfect spring day that feels like a gift itself. I had scanned the audience, hoping against hope to see my family despite their last-minute cancellation. The seats I'd reserved remained empty throughout the ceremony. I had told myself it didn't matter. I had celebrated with friends afterward, posed for photos with my professors who praised my portfolio, and pretended the ache in my chest was just excitement for the future. Later that evening, I received a text from Mom with a gift card code for Ann Taylor and a message for job interviews. Make sure to get something conservative. Congratulations, honey. And all this time, my grandmother had been planning something else entirely. Something that recognized not just my achievement, but my identity, my needs, my dreams. The room had gone completely silent as people realized something significant was happening. I looked up to see everyone staring at me, including my parents, who appeared confused rather than pleased. Dorothy? Mom said, her voice unnaturally high. What is this about? My grandmother stood and crossed the room to stand beside me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. It's about time, she said simply. I don't understand, my mother said, looking between me and Grandma Dorothy. What cottage? What is this about? The party guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. Allison stepped forward, genuine concern on her face. Natalie? What's going on? My hands were still shaking as I held the key. Grandma bought me a house, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. For my college graduation. 3 years ago. My father frowned. Mother, you should have discussed this with us. Real estate is a serious investment, and Natalie isn't ready for James, Dorothy interrupted firmly. Natalie is 24 years old, has a successful career, and has been supporting herself since graduation. When exactly would she be ready, in your estimation? The pointed question hung in the air. Several guests suddenly became very interested in their cake. Perhaps we should discuss this later, my mother suggested tightly, glancing around at the audience. No, Dorothy replied. I think now is perfect. We're celebrating academic achievement and new beginnings, aren't we? She turned to the gathered guests. 3 years ago, Natalie graduated with highest honors in graphic design. Neither of her parents attended her ceremony because they were at Allison's tennis match. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. My father's face reddened. That's hardly fair, Dorothy. I purchased Lighthouse Cottage the week after Natalie's graduation, Dorothy continued as if he hadn't spoken. It's a small place on Maple Cove, about a mile down the shore from my house. It needs some work, but it has good bones and an exceptional north-facing studio space, with the kind of natural light artists dream about. She turned to me, her eyes soft with years of understanding. I've been waiting for the right moment to give it to you. When James insisted on giving you your gift today, I decided it was time. You've known about this? I asked my father, confusion swirling through me. He shifted uncomfortably. Your grandmother mentioned it last week when we were discussing Allison's gift. We thought it would be efficient to handle both at once. Of course. They hadn't wanted to bother with a separate occasion for me. Can I see it? I asked Dorothy, ignoring my parents. Tomorrow, she promised. It needs work, but I think you'll see its potential immediately. Allison stepped forward, her expression a mix of confusion and genuine happiness. Nat, that's amazing. Your own place by the ocean? With a studio. She hugged me impulsively. We should celebrate both of us. Her sincerity caught me off guard, and despite everything, I hugged her back. When we separated, I saw something new in her eyes, a dawning awareness, perhaps, of the imbalance that had always existed between us. The party resumed its rhythm, though with a different energy. Several guests made a point of coming to congratulate me about the cottage, asking about my design work with seemingly genuine interest. My parents circulated stiffly, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. Later, as people began to leave, Dorothy pulled me aside to a quiet corner of the garden. I should explain more about the cottage, she said. I've been watching your career blossom these past few years. Those Instagram posts of your designs, the agency work you share, the award you won last fall, I see it all. My throat tightened. You follow my design account? Of course I do. I've watched you build your portfolio and develop your style. You have extraordinary talent, Natalie. But you need space to truly flourish. Not just physical space, but emotional space away from. She gestured vaguely toward the house where my parents were saying goodbye to guests. The cottage isn't perfect, she continued. The kitchen needs updating, and the bathroom is straight out of 1975. But the bones are good, and that studio space. She smiled. The previous owner was a watercolorist. She designed that room specifically for creating art. North-facing windows, built-in storage, even a small deck overlooking the water. I could barely process what she was saying. I don't know what to say, Grandma. It's too much. It's not too much. It's exactly right. She took my hands in hers. I've watched you shrink yourself in this house for years. I've seen you adjust your dreams to avoid disapproval, hide your accomplishments to keep the peace. You need a place where you can spread out, be loud, make mistakes, create without judgment. Tears filled my eyes as her words hit home. How did you know? Because I see you, Natalie. I've always seen you. She squeezed my hands. The cottage is yours, no strings attached. Make it your sanctuary. For the first time that day, perhaps for the first time in years, I felt truly seen and understood. Not as Allison's sister or James and Karen's disappointing daughter, but as Natalie Mitchell, graphic designer, artist, person of value. Thank you, I whispered, the words entirely inadequate for what I was feeling. Dorothy smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I'll pick you up and show you your home. Home. My home. The concept was almost too big to grasp. As the last guests departed, I noticed Allison standing by her new Tesla, watching our grandmother drive away. She turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. So, she said, a cottage by the ocean. That's pretty amazing. I nodded, still processing everything. I didn't know about your graduation, she said suddenly. That Mom and Dad missed it for my tennis match. You never said anything. I shrugged, uncomfortable with her sudden awareness. It wasn't your fault. But I should have known. She looked troubled, as if seeing our family dynamics clearly for the first time. I want to see this cottage. Maybe I could help you fix it up this summer before I start at the firm in September. Her offer surprised me. You'd want to do that? Of course. She smiled tentatively. What are sisters for? Perhaps this day of gifts had given us both something unexpected. Allison, a new perspective, and me, a glimmer of hope that our relationship could evolve into something more balanced. As we walked back inside, I clutched my cottage key, feeling its weight and promise in my palm. Tomorrow would bring a new beginning in more ways than one. The artificial cheerfulness that had sustained my parents through the end of the party collapsed as soon as the last guest departed. My mother began aggressively gathering dirty plates, her movements sharp with suppressed anger. Dad poured himself a scotch, his back rigid as he stared out the window. Allison and I exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the storm brewing. She began helping Mom with cleanup while I started breaking down the decorations I'd spent hours arranging. "That was completely inappropriate," Mom finally said, slamming a stack of plates onto the counter. Dorothy had no right to hijack Allison's special day with her statement. "Mom, it's fine," Allison said quickly. "I don't mind sharing the spotlight. It's cool that Natalie got such an amazing gift." "That's not the point," Dad interjected, turning from the window. "Your grandmother deliberately created a scene to make us look bad." I stopped folding the banner I was holding. "Is that what you think happened? That this was about making me look bad? What else would you call it?" Mom demanded. "Announcing in front of everyone that we missed your graduation? As if we had a choice. Allison needed us that day." Something snapped inside me, a lifetime of swallowing hurt, of making myself small, of accepting that I would always come second. "She had a tennis match," I said quietly. "A tennis match versus my college graduation. Do you have any idea how that felt? To walk across that stage knowing every other graduate had someone cheering for them, but my seats were empty?" "Don't be dramatic, Natalie," Dad dismissed. "You've always been oversensitive. We sent you a gift card." "A gift card?" I laughed hollowly. $200 to and Taylor while you just gave Allison a Tesla. Do you even hear yourselves?" My mother crossed her arms defensively. "Allison graduated from Yale Law School. You can't possibly expect equivalent gifts for a state university graphic design degree." Each word landed like a physical blow. Allison gasped. "Mom, that's not fair." "Life isn't fair," Dad said firmly. "Some people achieve at higher levels than others and are rewarded accordingly. That's reality." "The reality," I said, my voice shaking, "is that you've favored Allison my entire life. Her elaborate birthday parties while mine were forgotten. Her achievements celebrated while mine were ignored. Her needs prioritized while mine were dismissed." "That's ridiculous," Mom protested, but her eyes slid away from mine. "Is it? When I was struggling in school, begging for help because I couldn't understand why reading was so difficult for me, what did you do? You compared me to Allison. You told me to try harder. You scheduled extra tutoring for me with high school students who had no idea how to help me." I turned to my father. "And you, Dad? You called me lazy. Said I wasn't applying myself. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To be trying her absolute hardest and still be told it's not enough?" "Natalie," he began, but I wasn't finished. "It took until college for a professor to recognize the signs and suggest I get tested. Dyslexia and ADHD, Dad. Actual neurological conditions that explained everything I'd been struggling with. And when I called to tell you the diagnosis, do you remember what you said?" He looked away, jaw tight. "You said, well, I suppose that explains why you're not like your sister. Not, I'm sorry we missed this. Not, how can we help you now?" Just confirmation that I would never measure up to Allison. The room fell silent except for my ragged breathing. Allison stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Natalie, I swear I didn't understand how bad it was." "How could you?" I replied, not unkindly. "You were just living your life. The problem was never you, Allie." "Don't put this all on us," my mother said, though her voice lacked conviction. "We provided everything you needed. Private schools, college tuition, but not support," I interrupted. "Not validation. Not love that didn't feel conditional on achievement." "Of course we love you," Dad exploded. "This victim narrative you're constructing is completely unfair. We're proud of what you've accomplished given your limitations." The word hung in the air like poison. "Limitations," I repeated softly. "There it is. You've never seen my differences as just that, differences. You've always seen them as deficiencies." "Dad, that's horrible," Allison said, her voice breaking. "Natalie is incredibly talented. Have you even looked at her design portfolio? The clients she's landed? The awards she won last year." My father had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I'm sure she's very creative. That's always been her area." "She's brilliant," Allison insisted. Do you know she created custom templates that half my law school study group used for our briefs and case summaries? Professor Abernathy asked where we got them because they were so effective at organizing complex information visually. I stared at my sister, surprised by her vehement defense and the specific knowledge of my work. You knew about that? I asked. Of course I did. I've been bragging about my genius designer sister for years. She turned back to our parents. But you wouldn't know that because you never ask about Natalie when you call me. It's always about my accomplishments, my future, my potential. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? My parents looked genuinely startled by this new perspective. What are you talking about? Mom asked. You've always thrived on achievement. Because it was the only way to get your attention. Allison exclaimed. Do you think I enjoyed the pressure? The constant expectation of perfection? The subtle message that my worth depended on my next accomplishment. She walked over to stand beside me, our shoulders touching in silent solidarity. I'm not the villain in Natalie's story, she continued more quietly. But I've benefited from your favoritism my whole life, and I never said anything. That makes me complicit. My father ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than his years. This is absurd. We've given both of you every advantage. No, Dad, I said gently. You gave Allison every advantage. I succeeded despite you, not because of you. That's enough, my mother snapped, tears in her eyes. I won't stand here and be accused of being a terrible parent when I've dedicated my life to this family. I'm not saying you're terrible parents, I clarified. I'm saying you've been unequal parents. There's a difference. And what do you want us to do about it now? Dad demanded. You're adults. What's done is done. I took a deep breath, feeling strangely calm despite the emotional storm we were navigating. I want you to hear me. Really hear me, maybe for the first time. I want you to recognize that your treatment of us has been unbalanced and that it's caused real pain. I want you to try to see me, not as a disappointment or a problem to be managed, but as your daughter who has built a life and career to be proud of, even without your support. My words hung in the air, heavy with decades of unspoken truth. After a long moment, my mother whispered, I didn't know you felt this way. You never asked, I replied simply. We stood in silence, the four of us caught in a moment of painful clarity. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the perfect lawn where Allison's Tesla gleamed in the golden light. Finally, Allison spoke. I want us to do better. All of us. She looked at our parents. Starting with acknowledging what Natalie has said instead of defending yourselves. My father opened his mouth as if to argue, then closed it again. He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I need time to process this, he said finally. But I hear you, Natalie. I'm not promising I agree with everything you've said, but I hear you. It wasn't an apology or an admission, but it was something. A crack in the wall of denial that had stood between us for so long. I'm going to stay at Mia's tonight, I said, suddenly exhausted by the emotional confrontation. And tomorrow I'm going to see the cottage with Grandma Dorothy. Can I come? Allison asked tentatively. To see the cottage, I mean. If that's okay with you. I nodded, touched by her request. I'd like that. As I packed my overnight bag, I felt lighter despite the difficult conversation. For years, I had carried the weight of unspoken hurt and resentment. Giving voice to those feelings, being heard, even reluctantly, had loosened something inside me. The cottage key sat on my dresser, catching the last rays of sunlight. It represented more than property. It was independence, recognition, a space to define myself outside the shadow of family expectations. Tomorrow would bring a new chapter, not just a new home, but perhaps the beginning of new family dynamics based on truth rather than comfortable fictions. 1 week after the graduation party, I stood on the weathered deck of Lighthouse Cottage, watching waves roll gently onto the shore below. The salty breeze carried the scent of blooming beach roses that grew wild along the property line. In the distance, a small sailboat tacked against the wind, its white sail bright against the blue horizon. I still can't believe this is mine, I said to myself, running my hand along the sun-warmed railing. The cottage was exactly as Dorothy had described, small but solid, in need of updates, but full of character and potential. The 1970s kitchen with its avocado-colored appliances made me laugh, and the pink bathroom was truly a sight to behold, but the bones of the place were perfect. Hardwood floors throughout, a river stone fireplace, windows everywhere to capture the coastal light. And the studio space. My heart had nearly stopped when Dorothy first showed me the north-facing room with its wall of windows and vaulted ceiling. Built-in shelves and drawers lined one wall, perfect for organizing design materials. A previous owner had installed excellent track lighting. The deck outside the studio offered an unobstructed view of the cove, ideal for breaks when my eyes needed rest from the screen. I'd spent the week shuttling between my apartment and the cottage, bringing carloads of essentials and working remotely from the card table I'd set up temporarily in the studio. My apartment lease would end in 2 months, giving me time to properly move and make necessary repairs to the cottage. The sound of tires on gravel pulled me from my thoughts. I turned to see Allison's Tesla coming up the winding driveway. She had texted earlier asking if she could stop by with lunch. Our relationship had shifted since the confrontation with our parents, not dramatically, but noticeably. There was a new honesty between us, fragile but promising. "This view is incredible," Allison called as she climbed out of her car carrying a picnic basket. "No wonder you've been practically living here all week." I smiled and met her at the steps. "Wait until you see inside. It's a 1970s time capsule. Perfect for a designer," she teased. "You can go wild updating it." We set up lunch on the deck, gourmet sandwiches, fruit, and iced tea from the cafe in town. As we ate, Allison took in the panoramic ocean view. "I get it now," she said quietly. "Get what?" "Why Grandma Dorothy chose this place for you. It's like she bottled your personality and turned it into a house." She gestured around us. Creative, peaceful, a little bit separate from everything else, but with this amazing perspective. I was touched by her observation. "I've been thinking about that too." She knew what I needed before I did. Allison picked at her sandwich. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this week about everything. Our family, growing up, how different things were for us." I nodded, giving her space to continue. "I honestly never saw it clearly before," she admitted. "I mean, I knew Mom and Dad were harder on you about grades and stuff, but I thought that was just because school came easier to me. I didn't understand about the dyslexia and ADHD. It wasn't your responsibility to understand," I said. "You were just a kid too. But I should have noticed more as we got older." She met my eyes directly. "I should have said something when they missed your graduation for my tennis match. That was wrong, Nat. So wrong." I shrugged, uncomfortable with her intensity. "Water under the bridge now." "No, it's not. Because it's part of a pattern that's still happening." She set down her sandwich. "Mom called me yesterday to ask if I'd talked sense into you yet." "What does that mean?" "Apparently they think your outburst at the party was just you being dramatic and jealous of my Tesla." She rolled her eyes. "They wanted me to convince you to apologize for ruining my special day." I felt a familiar sinking sensation. "And what did you say?" "I told them they owed you an apology, not the other way around." She smiled at my surprised expression. "I also said if they couldn't acknowledge the validity of your feelings, they might lose their relationship with both daughters." I stared at her, stunned by this unexpected advocacy. "You said that to them?" "I did." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Look, I'm not claiming I'm suddenly perfect. I've benefited from their favoritism my whole life, and I'm sure I've been blind to my own privilege in our family. But I want to do better. I want us to have a real relationship, not the weird competitive dynamic they created." "I'd like that too," I said softly. After lunch, I gave Allison a proper tour of the cottage. She exclaimed appropriately over the pink bathroom, "It's so bad it's almost good," and immediately began brainstorming renovation ideas. "What if we knocked out this wall to open up the kitchen?" she suggested, her law school precision suddenly channeled into home improvement. "And these cabinets could be repainted instead of replaced to save money." I asked, raising an eyebrow. She looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I'm overstepping. It's your place." "No, I assured her. "I could use the help, honestly. And the company." Her face brightened. Really? Because I have 6 weeks before I start at the firm, and I need something to do besides panic about my future. Plus, manual labor might be good for my overachieving brain. We spent the afternoon measuring rooms and making lists of materials. Allison's methodical approach complemented my creative vision, and for the first time, our different strengths felt like an asset rather than a comparison point. As evening approached, Allison reluctantly said she needed to head back to the city. At the door, she hesitated. "Mom and Dad want to come see the cottage," she said. "They asked me to feel you out about it." I tensed. "I'm not ready for that." "That's what I figured. I'll tell them you need time." She hugged me quickly. "This is your space, Nat. You get to decide who enters it and when." After she left, I called Dorothy to thank her again for the life-changing gift. "I knew you'd make it yours quickly," she said when I described my renovation plans. "You've always had a gift for transformation, seeing the potential in things others might overlook." "I wish Mom and Dad could see that," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. "They're products of their generation and upbringing, Natalie. They value what they understand, traditional markers of success, clear paths, measurable outcomes. Your creativity, your different way of thinking, these things are beautiful but harder for them to quantify. That doesn't excuse how they've treated me." "No, it doesn't," she agreed. "But understanding might help you set appropriate expectations. They may never fully grasp your gifts or give you the specific validation you've wanted. The question is whether you can build a relationship with them within those limitations." Her wisdom, as always, hit home. "I'm still figuring that out. Take your time," she advised. "Meanwhile, focus on creating your sanctuary. Healing doesn't happen all at once." That evening, I set up my drafting table by the studio windows. The sunset painted the water in shades of gold and pink, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. I unpacked my favorite pens and notebook, then sat down to sketch some initial design concepts for the cottage renovation. As darkness fell, I lit a candle and continued working, ideas flowing freely in this space that felt so intrinsically mine. No pressure to conform, no voices questioning my choices, no need to make myself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. Just me, my creativity, and the sound of waves breaking on the shore below. The cottage would need work, lots of it. The bathroom would need complete renovation, the kitchen updating, walls repainted, floors refinished. But the foundation was solid. The structure was sound. Like me, it had good bones and untapped potential. I opened my laptop and began researching coastal-inspired color palettes, my mind already transforming the space into a reflection of my aesthetic. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn approval or meet someone else's standards. I was creating purely for myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Allison, thinking about paint colors. "What if we did a soft sage green for the kitchen? Also, I'm bringing power tools this weekend." I smiled, realizing that healing came in unexpected forms. The sister who had unintentionally overshadowed me for years was now offering to help me build something new. The relationship was evolving, finding better balance. As for my parents, that path remained uncertain. Perhaps with time and boundaries, we could forge a healthier connection. Or perhaps I would need to accept the limitations Dorothy had described and find peace within them. Either way, I had this place, this sanctuary by the sea where I could be fully myself. I had my career that was flourishing on its own terms. I had Dorothy's unwavering belief in me, and now, possibly, a new relationship with my sister based on mutual respect rather than comparison. Sometimes the most meaningful gifts aren't the flashiest or most expensive. Sometimes they come in the form of a small key, a second chance, or the simple recognition of who you truly are. As I watched the moonlight ripple across the water outside my window, I felt something settle inside me, a sense of belonging, not to someone else's expectations, but to my own path. The journey ahead would have challenges, but for the first time, I was facing them from a place of strength rather than deficit. Some people get Teslas. Some get cottages by the sea. But the real gift is finding your own voice and the courage to use it, even when that means disrupting the comfortable patterns of the past to create something more authentic for the future. That night, I slept peacefully in my new home, lulled by the rhythm of waves against the shore, the sound of my own life, finally moving to its natural, beautiful beat. Have you ever felt overlooked in your family or received a gift that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and join our community of people finding their own paths. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others' recognition of it. Sometimes the most meaningful gifts are the ones that help us recognize ourselves.